Have you ever wondered what makes a company truly great? Not just successful once in a while, but consistently, reliably excellent? Whether it's the little coffee shop on the corner or some massive global corporation. Well, behind that consistency, there's always a powerful, well-designed system. And today, we're going to break down the blueprint for building one. Okay, so to get our heads around this, let's start with a brilliant little story. The book we're pulling from talks about this entrepreneur who leaves a giant company to open her own coffee shop. And you know what she realized almost immediately? To make that perfect latte, every single time, without fail, she needed the exact same core principles her old company used. You're talking clear processes, well-trained people, and equipment you can count on. Yeah, the scale is totally different, but the thinking behind the system, it's identical.
And that simple story really gets to the heart of it, right? What's the secret ingredient that connects something small scale, like repeatable quality in a coffee cup, with something enormous and high stakes, like safety in an oil refinery? How do they both achieve excellence?
Well, the answer is a framework called an Operational Excellence Management System, or OEMS for short. The easiest way to think about it is like a master blueprint. It takes leadership, quality control, and safety and weaves them all together into one single cohesive system. It's all about preventing those costly mistakes before they even have a chance to happen.
So how do you actually build one of these? Well, lucky for us, the framework is broken down into 7 fundamental steps. It all kicks off with leadership, then you move into defining what your system looks like, figuring out where you are right now, and then you start a cycle of improvement. You audit your progress, you close into gaps you find, and, this is key, you never ever stop learning. Let's start right at the top, with the absolute foundation. First things first, and you absolutely cannot skip this part, leadership. And I'm not talking about buzzwords here. The book is crystal clear that this is the bedrock of the entire system. If you don't have real, sustained commitment from the very top, any attempt to build this kind of excellence is pretty much doomed from the start. And here is the big mental shift that has to happen. The book quotes business author Jim Collins on this, and it's so important. The job of a great leader isn't to manage talented people. It's to build an incredible system with clear, simple rules, and then let those talented people do their thing within it. You manage the system, you don't micromanage the people. Okay, now we're heading into the engine room. With that leadership foundation in place, the next 5 fundamentals are all about building the actual machinery of excellence. This is where you get your hands dirty. You define the core parts of your operation. Things like risk management, training standards, how you investigate incidents. You can't improve what you haven't defined. And once you've defined it, you got to be honest about where you are right now before you kick that powerful improvement cycle into gear.
And to build that machinery, you first need a map. This framework gives you a maturity scale so you can find your own "you are here" dot. Are you constantly just firefighting, lurching from one crisis to the next? That's what they call a regressive state. Or are you way up at the proactive level, where you're always looking for ways to get better? You just can't plan the journey if you don't know where you're starting from.
So once you know where you are, the engine you use to move forward is the plan, do, check, act cycle. It's a really simple loop, but man, it is powerful. You plan what you need to do, you go and do it, you check to see if it actually worked, and then you act on what you learned to make the next cycle even better. It is the very heartbeat of continuous improvement. And here's a perfect, real-world example of that check phase in action. The book shows data from a company that started doing regular field audits. Just look at the difference it made to their contractor injury rate, a drop of nearly 50%. That is the real-world impact of a system that doesn't just make plans, but actually goes out and checks its own work.
And that brings us to the 7th and, maybe the most crucial fundamental of all. A great system isn't something you build once and then just forget about. It has to be a living, breathing thing. And for that, you need an engine that prevents stagnation and actively pushes everyone to learn. Because without it, you're just doomed to repeat the past.
And this is where things get really fascinating and honestly a little bit shocking. The book points out a pretty staggering statistic. Up to 85% of all workplace incidents are repeats. Just let that sink in for a second. The vast majority of mistakes are not new mistakes. They are failures of the system to learn from something that has already happened. That number, 85%, it forces us to ask a really tough question, one that's posed directly in the source material. Are we, as organizations, just fundamentally unable to learn from our own mistakes? I mean, if the same problems keep happening over and over, something in the learning process is clearly broken.
Well, the book argues that the problem isn't that we can't learn, it's that we don't share what we've learned. In a typical siloed company, knowledge gets trapped. One team learns a tough lesson, and that knowledge just stays there. The fix is to build active learning networks that are designed to spread solutions around and leverage expertise across the entire company. That way, one team's mistake becomes everyone's lesson.
So, after all this work, building the leadership foundation, crafting all that machinery, fueling the learning engine, what's the payoff? Why does any of this actually matter in the real world?
The results of a mature system are absolutely transformative. We're not just talking about fewer accidents. We're talking about delivering projects on time and on budget. We're talking about building way stronger relationships with your partners, and it's about creating a culture where people feel empowered and motivated to do their best work. It really is about building a workplace that is safer, smarter, and way more successful.
So if there's one big idea to take away from all this, it's this powerful shift in your thinking. Stop trying to manage people and start building excellent systems that allow great people to shine. And that leaves us with one final question for you to think about. Which process in your work or even in your life is just crying out for a better system?